Why is the question of origin so important? Did Darwin get it right? Is evolution purely materialistic without plan or purpose? Can consciousness be explained materialistically? Join us on the journey as an agnostic, a Christian, and a Buddhist help us search for our origins. Well, the format for this evening's program will be fully question and answer. And we'll begin with two general questions for our panelists, followed by two specific questions for each panelist focused on their own interests and specialties. The answer to the focus question should be about 5 to 10 minutes in length, and then we'll give the other two panelists an opportunity to add their comments with a final response by the original focus panelist. Time permitting, I may have additional questions up my sleeve before you get your turn at the microphones. We'll see how the evening goes. Our aim is not to have a debate this evening with winners and losers, but rather to have you, the audience members, winners of an honest and amiable exchange of different ideas and viewpoints. Understanding and education are our goals this evening. So, with that, I have an opening question to all of the panelists, beginning with Dr. Tiffany. How did you develop an interest in your particular area of study, and where do you see yourself on your journey, both personally and professionally?
Thank you, Art. How did I develop an interest? Well, maybe I could not avoid it, because an interest in the natural world, particularly in plants, derived from the fact that both of my parents were PhD botanists before me, and my brother had gotten a PhD before me, so in self-defense I had to. But beyond that, I have found that one of life's greatest challenges is, being ignorant. And looking at the natural world around me and the absolute fascination in trying to understand and how it operates. And initially, because all the parents and my brother were botanists, I focused on plants, but as I grew to gain a broader appreciation of natural science, I moved on to include plants and geology, so that paleontology and the fossil record of plants grew from that. And then increasingly spread my interest to other places like astronomy and physics and other aspects of biology and zoology. And the journey, as you refer to it, has been one of increasingly expanding my interest and my understanding. And what has accompanied it has, again, been an increasing sense of my ignorance. And I take an enormous pleasure and excitement in doing this. I take an equally enormous pleasure and excitement in trying to get other students excited in this, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy teaching very much. Because I think of the number of years it has taken me to understand what all the courses presented to me contained in them and how to tie them together. And I would like to foreshorten that time in the students that I encounter so that they do not have to spend as long working their way through the same material before they start to make the connections. And personally and professionally on that journey, the professional part has, I think, become more of a focus at present in trying indeed to tie materials together. Certainly I teach things like principles of paleontology and plant systematics and the history of geology and a wildly diverse other set of things. But increasingly I attempt to make the opportunity in each course to pull together strands that would not necessarily be expected within that course. My introducer alluded to the history of life, which sounds like an awful lot to cover in 10 weeks, and I agree that it is. But within that course, one of the things I have tried to build on in the past decade has been increasingly look at science as a human endeavor and to intercalate all aspects of science together as they focus on our understanding of the history of this planet.
Good. Dr. Schloss.
Well, this is interesting to hear one another's journeys. I have had a similar experience growing up, just being absolutely enthralled by the natural world, and from my earliest memories I wanted to be a scientist, actually. But as I grew up, I found that a number of the questions I began asking in deep parts of myself didn't appear to be answered, and in fact not answered wrongly, but simply not addressed by the natural sciences. And I began, in part I think because my father and extended family were Holocaust survivors, I began My life was profoundly shaped by questions of what life is about, what's the basis of right and wrong in terms of how we treat one another, and what does it mean to be human? What is human nature all about? By the time I got to college, I really experienced these two loves as seemingly disparate worlds. I loved the sciences, but they didn't seem at that time, at least in terms of my engagement with them, to address the issues which most deeply motivated my life. And C.P. Snow, by the way, has written a little book called The Two Cultures, in which he addresses this phenomenon. So I dropped out of college and lived on a commune in a remote valley in the island of Molokai in the Hawaiian Islands for a while. Spent that time on a personal quest, and which for me actually was resolved in an encounter with the Christian revelation, and returned to college, and lo and behold,